I'm super excited about today's episode because we are going to talk about all kinds of exciting things from farming to venues to floristry. Welcome, Mary and Dawn, to the Flower Podcast.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. Well, I am I'm like amazed at everything you guys do. I was super thrilled that you guys have venues, you have gardens, you farm, you do it all. So we have to always start at the beginning. So, how did you guys find your way into the world of floristry?
Well, it started when we were in high school. So Dawn and I are sisters, and Dawn's the oldest,
Yep.
and I'm the youngest. So we were in an ag program in our local high school where we learned horticulture, and then we were in our FFA program where we learned floral design. So we were doing floral design like fundraisers and competitions, and we both really enjoyed it. So like it was really interesting because the one time I did a floral design at our local mall, like a floral design competition at our local mall when I was like 16 or something.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, I don't know if it was like a bridal bouquet or something like that I entered in the mall competition. And I won the competition, and the local judge was from our local flower shop. So he was like, well, why don't you come in and interview, and we'll see if we can get you a job. So my dad drove me down there, and I got to work at the local flower shop, and it was a really great opportunity. I mean, it was a very traditional flower shop, but I really loved being there. So that was kind of like my entry into the floral design world. And Dawn's story is a little bit different, like the way she was trained. So I'll let her tell you that.
Yeah, I did it in high school also and helped out at flower shops like seasonally just for fun. And then when I went over to college, I got a horticulture degree, but there was a program, like a floral design program at my school that you could take 4 years, and I did that like secondary to my horticulture degree. And then when I graduated college, I pretty much graduated in May and got married that October and wanted to do my own wedding flowers. So I did my own wedding flowers. Mary helped.
It was our first wedding that we did together.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and my mom was like, I remember her being like, hot pink and sunflower. It's gonna work. And we were like, it's great. It'll be great. And she's like, where are you gonna get everything? And we went to like Home Depot and bought like metal hanging paint buckets to be like the pew flowers. And we just had all kinds of DIY things going on, but it was actually really, really pretty. It was so
Yeah,
pretty.
so
Yeah.
that started it. And then we had other jobs, but would do like we did Mary's wedding flowers and our other sister's wedding flowers and my best friend's wedding flowers. And so little by little, people kept asking us to do their wedding flowers. And it started to turn from more of like a hobby to like, we need to make a decision here. What are we going to do? We can't, be doing this every weekend and all night on top of our 40-hour week jobs. So eventually, Mary quit her job first, and we opened the flower shop on her husband's property, their farm, in just like a detached garage, and worked there. And I followed a couple months later, and that's how we started.
Well, so now
So we
you
were in our garage, Scott, for like at least 2 years, producing weddings and events. And we didn't have running water. We just had a hose, a garden hose. And my husband was like, well, if you can put $15,000 in the bank, I'll put running water out there. And we were like, okay, totally. We can totally do that. And so it was like, we didn't have enough for a hot water heater at that time. So we did not have
Cold water only.
hot water, but we used that sink and that running water for 14 years in our garage. And it was like a really great time, to run our business as a studio based florist. It was great.
Yeah, we would just meet people at Mary's dining room table. And it grew from there.
Yeah. So to all the studio based florists out there, all the ladies working in their garage, like mad respect, because you can do it. And we are the pure example of how you can welcome people to your home and be who you are and wow them with the flower magic.
I love that. I have to ask, so you both have degrees in horticulture now, and you both
Mhm.
had jobs, like regular jobs before you made the jump. What were you
Yeah.
doing? Were you doing horticulture? Oh, I can't say the word. I have a degree in it and I can't even say it. What were you doing, horticulturally related jobs at the time? Or you said you
Yeah.
were working as a florist part-time? I'm just kind of figuring out what the background was.
I was in sales at like a big plant nursery. So I think I
Okay.
did that for 8 years. And I had accounts all over like the East Coast, selling trees and shrubs. And I liked my job, but I like being my own boss and being creative a little bit more. And then Mary was in propagation, also at a nursery, plant
Yeah, so
propagation.
I was helping at a 1 acre greenhouse propagating plants, and I loved it. I learned a lot, and it was a really successful, family run business, and they had a wonderful reputation. And, I really, really learned a lot at that opportunity. I worked there for, I think it was like a total of 5 summers. And then when I was pregnant with my first born, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my husband was like, okay, like we have paid off your student loans, like we've paid off the car. We can manage some of this. So like your business is only going to grow if you are focusing all of your energy on it. And I said
That
to him,
makes
like, well,
sense.
what if it doesn't work out? And he was like, you could be an asset at any small business. So like you just find another job. And he was like, I want you to focus your attention on this. And I was like, okay. So that's what we did. And it was like, the way we were able to do that is we kept our costs, like our overhead was super, super
Yeah.
low. And we just hustled, like we did jobs for a dime. Like if we turned a dime on it, we did the job. And there are some events that we like deleted out of the portfolio. Let me put it to you that way, Scott.
We did a lot of years where it was just her and I, and then gradually brought on staff. And now we have a great team. But it grew so big. We were doing 130 weddings a year
Yeah.
out of a garage.
Unhealthy. Yeah, we were on top of each other. It was crazy.
Wow, that's amazing. It makes me just think, so many times people feel like they've got to spend all this capital or go into debt or, and just to hear that you guys bootstrapped it, it sounds like, is that maybe that's not the right
Mhm.
word, but, that you were just trying to build your reserves and grow with as little overhead as possible.
Yeah, we
Um,
were
yeah.
really strategic about like spending money. So, I'm the spender and Dawn is the conservative one. So, if I was like, okay, I want to buy a van, she'd be like, okay, well, this is how much money we need to do the down payment, and this is how much money we're going to make. We're going to pay the payments every month. So, like, this is what we need to set aside. And she was a big fan of like, it all has to be in the savings account, and then you can purchase it.
Yeah.
And that's how we made a ton of investments, because if we didn't have that $40,000 set aside for the thing, we weren't getting it.
Yeah. And we
We weren't
still
getting
do
it.
that.
Yeah.
We still run a savings account and we move money over there when it's, spring or fall and we're making great money. I'm like, great, move some over to the savings account because we're going to
Because
need it in
she
January.
knows I have a
Right.
project brewing.
Mary, you seem like the kind that always has a project brewing.
Yes.
That's very true. Yeah. The project queen is what I am known as. Yes.
So, okay, so let me make sure I understand this. You make sure that in your savings account you can pay for it all the way, or you just feel like you grow that savings account until the buffer, like you feel comfortable making that purchase, knowing that, yeah.
It's the money set aside. So like
Yeah.
in the beginning, when it was just me, I was like, okay, how much money do I need to bring Dawn on full time? And we
Okay.
calculated like what her salary would need to be. And then I saved all year for that salary. Like I didn't take a salary because I knew that if I wanted to have her come on, I needed that money for her. And then like, a couple years ago, we wanted to do some projects at our studio at the time, and we needed like $10,000. We set that $10,000 aside. Just last year, I wanted to put a new roof on a building, when the building we're in right now, and we were like, how do we do that? And like, we just put the money aside. And it was, it's not like I get impatient sometimes, but I think it's a much safer way of operating. So you're not overextended. So, we do have a mortgage on our property now, but it's really manageable, really manageable.
Yeah. We don't, run a line of credit or anything, for staff or big projects. Like we just kind of set it aside and do the projects when we have the money.
So like the way that we have this year-round income, like a lot of people ask us about this. So, when we were just doing weddings and events, it's kind of like being a farmer. Like it's very seasonal. Your income is very, very seasonal. So we decided that if we didn't want to be like super stressed out about booking like every single wedding, we wanted to have an alternative source of income. That's when we opened our first venue. And that has provided us with year-round income from that site rental fee at our first venue, a Milk House Party. So that was really the first year, like we were pretty heavily booked with a Milk House Party bookings, was the first year I didn't feel the need to be like, should we get a line of credit? Should we get a line of credit? Should we get a line of credit? To get us through that January, February, March crunch. And, now that we have our retail store and our second venue open, again, it's these alternative sources of income that it's really a safety net. And that's certainly something that we learned through the pandemic as well, that it's good to have a variety of things, in your purse, because you never know what's going to happen.
We also have always done like more than just flowers. Like we'll, when it's slow, we'll teach classes and workshops and sell tickets to that. Mainly Mary, will do holiday decorating. So a lot of people want help putting their Christmas decor up. Mary and some staff will go and do that. And then we'll make money taking it all down in January. During the pandemic, we became landscapers because we didn't have any events, but we do have horticulture degrees and people were working in their yards. So we offered, our services to help, design beds and, all that
containers, patios.
Yep. Containers. We do like designer container gardening, all that kind of stuff to supplement when there's not weddings happening.
Yeah. Basically we're workaholics and we're scrappy little things. So we pull it together. So, I mean, when I'm pretty sure every event florist out there had their calendar full, for 2020. Right. And it was wiped clean. And I remember Holly Chappell, I remember talking to her on the phone and she was like, you better say goodbye to the September and October weddings. We're not going to have them. And this was like May. And I was like, no, like we're May and June are gone, Holly, but like, we're going to have September and October. I mean, come on. And Mama was right. We barely had the September and October the following year. Yeah. So we did not have an entire year's worth of income. And that was like a really horrible feeling. So we were, we had dove into this real estate investment where we bought a 3-acre property and we were going to relocate like 5 minutes away. And we were really forced to quickly open up a retail store, which I never thought I would be the retail florist. And here we are, selling houseplants and fall candles and, like we're getting our pumpkins ordered and lined up and I'm placing my order for poinsettias next week, and it's really a great industry. I mean, I have a lot of respect for all the retail florists out there that have done this for a long time. This is a lot of work.
Well, it's what's fascinating for me is, and exciting for me. It's not very many people I get to talk to that have done as many different pieces of this puzzle. I mean, I feel like I've dabbled in a lot of them, and so for me to have this conversation I'm really stoked. We've kind of glossed over a couple things, and I've just got to go back. So your first venue you bought. When did you buy that? Was that right before the pandemic, during the pandemic? The Milk House?
So that was, let's say, It was like 2010.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
so
was
it's been a
before
while.
the pandemic.
Yeah. So our grandparents lived on a like 93-acre farm just a couple miles away from my house. And when our grandfather passed away, the farm went for sale. So my husband and I ended up buying it. And we were cleaning out the barns, because I was petrified that my husband would clean them out because he would just throw everything in the dumpster. So I would go clean them out. Dawn would help sometimes. And like we were in the milk house. And I loved the light in there. I loved the space. I would go there on my day off and just be like sorting through all this like horde of farmer stuff. And I really liked it. And I thought, all right, well, like we're so crammed in our garage at this point, like maybe we could use this space for like workshop space or something. So that's what we did. We started out just hosting workshops there. And then, we were able to eventually do a little bit more work there, put in heating and air conditioning. And then we were renting it out for events. And then the next year, then we put in the garden, and like that's when we put the garden in, that's when the party came, and so it was probably over like 2-3 years where we built out that venue. So it only hosts 45 guests, and we don't staff the space.
Yeah.
So the way it makes money is like we clean it, we have it very lightly seasonally decorated. We upsell the flowers on it. We can upsell like signage or whatever, balloon garlands, that kind of thing. And then we have it ready for the party. So we don't have staff there that's like clogging up a lot of that labor cost.
Yeah.
So it works out really well. It really does.
Yeah,
And
I mean that's so
it's like
streamlined.
it's a beautifully like curated space that a lot of venues here like they require you to have 80 people, you have to meet a head count, or you have to use their food, you have to use a certain caterer. Here you can bring in your own food, whoever you want can cater it, and they're just renting the space for 8 hours, one event a day. They go in, they bring their food, they bring their caterer, and we don't have to staff it, and they clean it up when they leave, and it's booked pretty much almost every weekend all year. So.
Yeah, it works out great. And like, because it is on preserved farmland, there are some restrictions with it. So we had to learn a lot of that. Like that took some time to kind of figure out like, how are we going to structure this to be within the bounds of that farmland preservation restriction? So like, we're not allowed to host weddings there, like wedding ceremonies. So like, great. Totally fine.
Yeah.
We don't need that there. It's really a space just to have like rehearsal dinners, showers, that kind of thing. And then, we are restricted on the number of events that we're having there, but like it works out seasonally, and then we're also like not allowed to expand on the footprint. So like, I'm sure people are thinking, well, why would you have a venue that only seats 45 guests? Well, that's the space that we had. So I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but that's what we had to work with, and it's been fine.
Yeah.
So if you have a small space and you're worried about it, the only way to figure it out is to try it.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I really like about sort of this organic growth that you experienced is it gave you that opportunity to sort of cut your teeth on a smaller footprint, a smaller, sort of demand on your time and resources before you made the jump to the bigger one. So at the point when this particular venue was doing so well, was it covering the mortgage on it now? Was it a main revenue source, or do you feel like you were break even? No. Okay.
No. So a milk house party, so like the site rental is it starts at like our Saturday site rental is like $1,300, right? 1,300 now? 1,300. My goal was to no lie, pay the property taxes.
Okay.
I was like, I want to be able to pay the property taxes in New Jersey, which are offensive, with this income. And then, the farm.
Because you live on this farm now.
No, we don't. No, we don't
Okay.
live there. Our uncle
Okay.
lives there. Yeah.
Who does?
Yeah. My uncle, our uncle.
Okay. Okay.
So then like, you know, it's been something where we know that over time we're going to need to like, you know, you'll have to up the price because you have to do some upgrades. And then, you know, there's new regulation coming out. So we might need to like tweak where it's at. But I feel comfortable with like we're established there. I know that we've done the right thing for our preserve farm because we've kept the venue what it is. You know, it is a true milking parlor. You know, when you go into that back milking parlor, there's two different levels. You know, our guests are seated at that higher level where the cows were. So it's really unique. You know, it's not a plain room with folding tables. You know, it's a really unique space. And then it inspired us to kind of bring our new property to life, just like we did that one, you know, piece by piece, and like put some gardens in and put some white paint up and see what happens. And like, it's done well for us.
Okay, so now the new place, how long have you been there? And tell us more about that. And because it's a much bigger place, I know.
Yeah. So Dawn will tell the real estate saga story of this.
So we were outgrowing at Mary's house. So we had taken over, they had a 3-bay garage. We were in all 3 bays. We had staff. So we had so many cars cluttering up her driveway. And I think her husband was more than ready for us to move location. We talked a lot about building, but we're like unsure what we wanted. We didn't want to go far from where we were. Mary has kids, and it was so convenient for her to be, you know, working at her home. So we knew we wanted to be close. There was a location like 5 minutes away that we grew up. It, you know, had been like an antique store, primitive furniture, candles, that sort of thing. Previously, and then had been closed for years and years and years. And we loved it and had toured it years ago, but it was like so far out of our price range that it just wasn't even a consideration. But you know, things started to change. We were like, it was back for sale again. We made an offer the fall before the pandemic. We got outbid. We lost the property. Mary was devastated. So we went back to plan B. We were going to, you know, build, and we were trying to decide where on the farm we wanted to, you know, get the land, build, and all that. And to me, that project felt overwhelming, and like it was just going to cost so much money that we kind of watched. I was watching the space that we're in now, and I kept seeing that like nothing was happening with it. Nobody was moving in, nothing was changing. So I went back to the realtor in January or February and was like, hey, what's up with this space? You know, did you ever go to settlement closing on this? And she was like, it just fell through. They backed out. Do you want to make an offer? Does your offer stand? And I was like, no, because COVID was looming at this time. So we were like, the offer does not stand. We will make a different offer. So we offered a lesser amount. And by then interest rates were great. And they took the offer. So we kind of like fell into it at a really good price, at a great interest rate. And it's 3 acres with 3 barns. So like, you know, everybody was like, what are you going to do with all that space? And I was like, do you know Mary? Like, she will fill it. Yeah. We had no intentions of having a retail store. We were just going to move wedding operations into the main barn. And then, you know, I didn't even know what we were going to do with the other 2 barns. We we're going to figure it out as we went. And it needed a lot, you know, decent amount of work. So we had settlement in March. And the pandemic, the first place I wore a face mask was to settlement.
Yeah.
So it was literally like,
it was kind of a like really crazy time, but also that it was the perfect time for a small business that was like thinking about making a change. You know, this was the time to do it because a lot of people were the industry was like dividing. You know, it was either like the diehards, the people that would do it for no money, and then the people that did it like for the wrong reasons, they stepped out, you know? So like someone used this expression, I don't know who it was, it must have been on someone's podcast or something, Like the people that were swimming like without their trunks on, you could tell, like when the tide went out. And like I really felt like it kind of shook out some of the competition, because like if you could like put your boots in and like stay on ground, you were going to be all right. Whereas like other people just took a different path. You know, like when we were doing the real estate like thing, my husband was like, okay, like we always work with this one bank, so like let me get you my guy. And I was like, no, 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 no. We have nothing to lose. Like we are young women in business, and like the pandemic's happening and like stuff's going bonkers. So like I would be on the, okay, what's your best interest rate? How long can you lock it for? Okay, thanks, bye. Okay, what about you? What do you got? What about you? What do you got? And my husband was like, this is a terrible way to do business. And then like, damn if we didn't get 4% locked for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Go team.
That was pretty darn solid. So it like taking those risks in that unstable time, like worked out so that our mortgage is manageable. You know, I couldn't imagine going through that now with the interest rates being so high.
Oh, I know.
And then it worked because like when we were looking at moving, we were like, how are we going to do this? We have a fully booked spring. So like, I was like, how are we going to move location and do all of our, you know, April, May, and June weddings? Well, then, you know, every wedding got canceled. And the kids weren't in school. And we were like, everybody get a paintbrush and start cleaning and come help us. And we spent months with just like our pod, our families, our husbands, our kids, cleaned the whole place out, moved everything like ourselves, painted the whole building inside, and, you know, got it all set up. And then when we were allowed to, you know, start doing things again, it was like Mary and I selling grab and go bunches like out front. We would bring them out to the car.
Yeah.
And just
and our staff, like they hung with us, you know, like they you know, took the COVID pause, but like once we opened that store, they all came back. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So we were very lucky. Yeah. So we now have like, it's usually about 10, 12 people on payroll every week. So, you know, it fluctuates with the season a bit, but we are very, very lucky.
So, you know, one of the number one questions I always get when we start talking about venue related spaces is things like, well, how is that different than a traditional retail business or a flower farm? You know, because a lot of times you may have a farm and you want to start your own venue, or you want to create, you know, you may have the land, you want to build a barn, you know, something. And I'm curious, like, what are the different, like, what things do people need to know, you know, whether it's insurance or whether it, you know, how does all that work? And, you know, what advice would you give?
I've talked to a lot of people who want to do this. And I'm always like, well, how is your property set up? Like, are you rated commercial? Are you agriculturally zoned? Like, are you residential? So like, that's the first thing, you know? So if like you're residential, that's not going to work. You know, it's not going to work. So we're zoned commercial. And then we did have to like go to our township committee and get our, what's it called? Use permit. Yeah. Adjusted to include like, so we weren't just a retail store, that we were also a venue space. So they changed our use permit, and then that had to get put on towards like the planning board and that kind of thing. And they check like your driveways, like if it'll affect traffic on the main road. So kind of safety things like that.
Yeah. And it has to be like, you know, you have to be handicap accessible, and you have to have the proper parking and,
emergency exits, stuff like that.
So there was a lot we had to do to get that use permit. And then having events, the other thing you want to check is like the ordinances in your township regarding alcohol. So like that's a big thing. And like, you know, we only do like beer and wine here, but like we had to go to the township, get all that approved. That was a process. It was months.
It was a nightmare.
It was months.
So annoying.
We had to get a lawyer to be allowed to have a wedding here where they could have beer and wine.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's BYOB. And so how that works with the insurance. So, you know, we of course have our insurance policy, but So our client will get their own independent insurance policy, and it'll say like, we're waiving the responsibility of a garden party, and that whoever purchases the alcohol assumes responsibility for whoever is consuming it. And then, you know, if it's going to be self-serve, you know, the person that buys it is in charge of it. If there's going to be a bartender involved, you know, then there's waivers between those two people as well.
Yeah. And then we don't have a commercial kitchen or anything. So like you have to bring a caterer in here. Like we're not
caterer.
Yeah, we're not permitted to like touch the food, serve the food, you know, the alcohol, anything like that. We're strictly a venue space. And then, you know, any food, beverages is on the client.
So then you didn't have to get a serving permit. You just had to have the permit that allowed you to have it on your property.
Right. Yeah. So like if we were to handle any of the food, we would need like the Serve Safe certification, I think. And then you'd have to get like the health inspector to come and like inspect your space because you're handling it and that kind of thing. So like we don't do any of that. It's all prepared off-site. And then they take it all with them when they go.
Wow. I mean, okay, so that's something I didn't know, because I would think that would be easier to get permitted to do that kind of stuff, even though it's headaches because you're dealing with local government, but it's probably easier than getting health inspectors and all that other thing going on.
Yeah. Well, it kind of comes down to the septic. So like if you're going to put a kitchen in that's going to prepare food, then your septic has to be sized differently, because it needs to be like processing like some grease and food scraps. So the size of your septic has to be like exponentially larger, according to like how many heads of people are able to be in the building. I think that is correct. Yeah. And it's kind of silly because like the septic rules, even if I owned a half-acre property zoned commercial versus a 3-acre property zoned commercial with 3 buildings on it, you're only allowed a set amount of square footage of septic for that property. So you have to be thoughtful about what you're doing with your septic. So in the barn that we're in right now, our second venue space, we do not have a restroom in here now. We're saving our money.
We are.
To put the septic in this winter. And then the next year, we're going to save some more money.
And then we'll put the bathroom in.
And then we're going to put the bathroom in.
She tried to speed that up, but I said no.
So what do you do for restrooms?
They bring in the restroom trailer.
Yeah, so we rent in, you know, the client rents in a restroom trailer for the event.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's annoying, but it's a lot of places do it.
Yeah. A lot of venues in New Jersey do that. These more like rustic, you know, farm garden type venues.
Yeah. Well, and I think in some ways it may be a headache, but at the same time, it's got to make your space more affordable in some ways compared to some of these more elaborate venues.
Yeah. I think it's very affordable, but you know, it all adds up.
Right.
You know, so in our newer venue, we have seating for 80 guests. And we are allowed to do weddings here. So, you know, we're starting our wedding package at $5,500. And I think that's really reasonable. And then like, I would say our average wedding this year, you know, we've only been open here a year. Our average wedding this year will probably be like 11,000.
Yeah, 10 or 11 once they
add in the flowers and that kind of thing
and that kind of stuff.
So it helps. Certainly. I mean, I would like to see it like bump up a little bit so I could, you know, put in my restroom and some of these other projects I want to do. But I think that we're in a healthy starting point, and we've learned a lot already.
Yeah, and it has enabled us to be making, you know, the $10,000 or $11,000, but making it here on property versus when we're doing weddings offsite. We're in the middle of nowhere here in South Jersey. So we would be driving an hour and a half to these venues, setting up all day, hanging out, cleaning up that night at 10, 11, midnight, and then driving back. So we weren't getting home till 2 a.m. a lot of Saturday nights. So now we're closer, and so it's easier. And we're still be able to like make the money, but like getting home at 11 p.m. instead of 2 a.m.
Yeah. So we're still doing offsite events. So previously we would do like 2 offsite events on a Saturday, one for me, one for Dawn.
Yeah.
And then now we're only booking 1 offsite event on a Saturday so that we're leaving space for a team to be at this property. So, you know, our average wedding offsite is more than $12,000. So we really need to like, you know, grow here a little bit more to kind of close the gap. But our retail store is certainly helping with that.
Retail store has just been like leaps and bounds what we thought it would
Way
be.
more than I thought it would be.
And just has been doing great. So that has been another, you know, supplemental income that, you know, we're open 6 days a week. And we actually both enjoy it, shockingly. I didn't think we would like it, but we do like it. And it's been busy. So that's been great.
So your retail space, when did that actually open? And
so it opened August 2020. Yeah. And like our lower level of our barn, our big dairy barn, is 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of broken up into 3 segments. We have our office space and break room, and then we have our big retail floor, and then we have our design space. And the design space and the retail floor are kind of like an open air kitchen. So we do have it so it's viewed so that people can see the flowers and be with the flowers and see what our staff is working on. And like we had like, you know, like my mom and our, you know, our husbands were like, don't you want to like wall this off? Because floral design work can be very messy, you know? And they're like, don't you want to like not have all that seen by your customers? And we were like, nope. They love the flowers. Like people get drawn into these flowers. So let's just have them all out there. And I'm glad that we kept it open.
Yeah. People come back all the time. They love seeing what we're working on.
Yeah.
And it, you know, has worked good. We have team back there designing almost every day, and then Mary and I have meeting space to meet with clients, and we have a retail store manager and she handles the retail store. And then we have the third barn is holding all of our rental wedding inventory, so lanterns, candles, compotes. There's a barn full of all that.
Well, how nice that it can all live on one property. I know a lot of times people have storage units and, you know, their shops.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's a lot. Well, one of the things that just amazed me about everything you guys do is that you also grow flowers. You have your gardens, but you're also growing things in your spare time. And I'm kind of wondering, who's in charge of that, or how do you guys divide up responsibilities?
So like when we started a garden party, we always had gardens and we were supplementing, you know, a little bit, but like at that time, like when we started back in like 2007, it wasn't as mainstream to go out and forage for something or cut it from your yard. And then we found Holly Chapel and we saw like the things she was growing and adding to her designs are what made us like drool over it. We were like, oh, the geranium, like, oh, the berries, like blah, blah, blah. And Dawn said she saw an ad on Facebook and Dawn's like, let's go to this workshop because here's a mom working out of her home who has a garden style and maybe we can learn something. And then from that moment on, like, boom, we just turned a corner because we had a community and like the chapel designers and Holly and Evan, rest in peace. Like they really like we all became an instant family. And we've realized that like, you can be who you are. Like if you love your zinnias and you love your celosia and you love your hydrangea, like that can be sexy and mainstream and luxurious as well. And that's what I'm so grateful for, that we were able to like start growing and have more confidence to grow and grow and grow. So it started in our landscape beds where I took out anything I couldn't cut from. Like if I could not cut from it and use it in my flower shop, like it couldn't live there. And so we did that at my house, we did it at Dawn's house, and then we did that at the milk house. So we planted all those beds. And then when we bought this property, the 3-acre property, I was like, oh,
She went
so much
crazy.
space. Yeah. So then I was like, oh my God, I can't maintain all of this. So now we've hired Allison is with us, and she is really like our garden maven, and she does it all, you know? So like I'll buy the seed and give her the plan and be like, you know, here's the product, here's how we're going to lay it out. And then she does all the grunt work. And my God, like she works so hard, and it is amazing to have this help. And we couldn't do it without her now.
Sure.
But so we grow on an eighth of an acre here on our 3-acre property. We have our 1/8 of an acre field, and we grow peonies. Right now we have cosmos, strawflower, gomphrena, zinnias, snapdragons. We grew ranunculus this year for the first time.
A lot of ranunculus.
That was a learning
It was a
curve.
learning process, but we did have beautiful ranunculus at the end of it.
We probably shouldn't have started with 4,000 corms.
Oh, wow.
Like that wasn't, I wouldn't do that again. And the one, like, I'm not the kind of person that like wants to quit. Like, I'm not a quitter. I will grunt through it and be like, this goes on Mary's list of bad ideas, but we're going to get it done.
We did. But
And
never again are we buying 4,000 ranunculus corms.
the day I was planting the ranunculus, I thought, am I going to quit? I really thought I was going to, but we did it. We got them in the ground.
So almost every event we do has something we grow. You know, I make a cut list every week, and Tori and Sydney, Allison, they go out and cut, for all of our events. And then we also work with other local flower farmers. We're not good at dahlias, so terrible at dahlias. We've tried it multiple times, but I have local people that are great that we call, for those every week.
Yeah. And like how it kind of works, like we'll recipe out. We use trellis. I keep wanting to call it details.
Yeah.
And we use trellis to write our recipes, and we'll literally put a dollar amount to be like, okay, like this dollar amount of something locally grown in a shade of peach or light pink. And then we have that money allocated. So we'll like send a message out to our growers. Don't email them all. Yeah. And be like, hey, I need, $200 of blush. What do you got? Yeah. And then they work it out, and then it shows up by Wednesday. Great system.
Interesting. So then what I'm curious about is in the gardens, when you were ripping things out and putting new things in, were those all like woodies and perennials? That way it was kind of like you're planting and it's done.
Yeah.
Just maintaining.
We grow a ton. Yep. We grow a ton of like woody ornamental shrubs and perennials, limelight hydrangea, hellebore, toad lily,
like Weigelia, spirea. And when we were removing like yews and like tons of old boxwood and like huge evergreens and stuff. And I was just like, I don't know, like it's got to have flowers, like I need flowers. And we planted the whole front of our shop with invincible spirit to hydrangea and lavender. So there's like this 4-week period of the year where it's this beautiful combination of like this blooming soft lavender. So we have lavender phenomenal, and then this invincible spirit hydrangea, and it is show-stopping. But I'm gonna tell you what, in the dead of the winter, she's not that pretty, but no one cares because it's so freaking beautiful those 4 weeks out of the year. Like I don't even evergreen up there. It's fine.
Well, plus usually that time of year, you're usually slower. You're not doing as much, and you don't have the foot traffic probably as much.
Like, I know next week, I was just looking at the list of what we need to cut for next week. I know I need like 200 and some stems of limelight hydrangea, and I have those at my house, no problem. So it's like immediately something I can go cut. We don't have to spend money on it. They're just growing, on the side of my deck.
Beautiful. They're stunning. No brown in them. They're just perfect.
So that helps us too, being able to, grow it, cut it ourselves, and then we're not buying it in and all that.
So I got to ask this question. So then how do you account for that in your cost? It sounds like you don't, but I'm hoping you do.
Yeah, we definitely do.
Oh yeah.
So everything's assigned a dollar value. I don't usually charge, like I'm not going to put, $4 on a limelight hydrangea like it would cost me from the wholesaler, but I'll put half of that
Yeah.
So I'm still accounting for the fact that, I do have to maintain it, and I do cut it on my own time and transport it.
It's not free to grow it.
Yeah.
It's not cheap to grow it.
Yeah. So we do assign a cost value to everything, even what we grow.
Oh,
Good.
yeah. You have to. I mean, it costs a ton of money to employ someone to maintain this and set it all up and do all that, take that risk. No,
Well, I know
dollar.
that. I know that. And that's why I was hoping you were going to say that. But when you also know you're kind of cutting out of your own private garden, that you've got your limelights around your back porch, sometimes people kind
She's
of
never home to enjoy them anyway, because she's always at work. So,
but I know, but a lot of times though, people are like, oh, well, those are the backyard. That's sort of their gravy. They pad their orders with, and I'm kind of like, no. I mean, you're right.
Yeah, no, we do account for it. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna lie. Like sometimes we'll be making a bridesmaid's bouquet, and I'm like, this is not enough. We need something else. And then Mary will run outside and be like, what can we cut to add to this?
Yeah,
and obviously then that's not maybe in the recipe.
I always have, I'm like, I swear, if I'm ever going to get a tattoo, this is what it's going to say. It's going to be like, the garden always saves me. Like, I'll be like, this is the ugliest design of all time. I don't know what it needs. And I just go outside and I find it.
Yeah. I mean, we even forage like massive amounts of like Russian olive off the side of the road. And I still assign a dollar value to the Russian olive that's on the side of the highway, like, because I'm paying somebody to go cut it. So it has to have a dollar value assigned to it.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that. Well, so what do you think percentage wise, and I know it's hard because you have all kinds of different events, just a guesstimate, what percentage of your weddings are products you grow?
At least 20.
Yeah, I'd say 20 to 30%.
Yeah.
And it goes up more every year. Like, yeah, there'll be some weddings, that we'll do that are 100% local, stuff that we grow. We have a couple of those every year.
In June, the beginning of June.
Yep.
We did this wedding for this, like, such a special client. And like everything was from our property. The white peonies, the white ranunculus, the mock orange, the viburnum, the deutzia, everything. Wow. And like,
it all bloomed at the perfect time.
Oh my God, Scott! Like
the lily of the valley,
I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. And I turned around, and like the ceremony was all set, and like the client was walking into the room, and like I'm just like crying, and my staff is like, "Are you all right? Like, why are you crying?" I was like, "It's just so beautiful." Like it's like watching your kids grow up. You're like, "Wow! Like look at what you turned into." It's the best feeling.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So what, that being said, what do you think has been the hardest part about your journey? Narrow it down a little bit.
I mean,
okay, it froze again.
No,
I don't feel that way.
The hardest part. I guess the hardest part is maybe, and I like hate using the word balance, because it's impossible to have a balance, but like we're workaholics. So the pandemic actually was good for us because it taught us that we could get by with no weddings. And we were like, whoa, we don't need to do 4, 5, 6 weddings a weekend. We could do 2 weddings a weekend. And that was but learning that lesson, because we were constantly like hustling. Meanwhile, we both have families, and we're gone every weekend, and we're working late every night. And so like that has been a hard lesson to learn. And it took us years to get to that point. And then also, I guess for me, I'm like a super control freak. So being able to like find good staff that you can trust, that you train, that you can hang on to, for us has been really important. I know a lot of other businesses, they just hire freelancers, and we have amazing freelance teams that we love also, a lot of chapel designers. But I think it makes us unique in that we do have staff that we keep year round. We value them. We know what they're good at. And like that has been a process getting those people here.
It's been like, you can't even put a price tag on having a staff like this where, emergencies happen and you're not able to be present. And, we've been through this. Like I've had an experience with my sons, and they were in the hospital, and I was in the hospital for 10 days with my son, and I didn't come to work for 3 weeks.
Weeks. like April,
yeah,
like right before May wedding season.
And there were weddings that went by that I wasn't involved in at all. And our team like saw us through that time of like trauma and gave us the most beautiful gift. Like we trusted them with everything. And like our clients like knew what was going on, but like nothing
they didn't have to
was
worry.
missed. I was never worried about anything. And that meant the world to me. It really did. So like I'm so glad we have these people because they're the family, you know, behind us too.
So I'm glad you said that, because I feel like sometimes as owners, people get real short-sighted about just letting go enough, and training your coworkers, and enough that you can trust them, and things are going to get handled. Um, I feel like when we spoke before, you were saying like everybody knows how to do everything, pretty much. Is that true?
You kind of have to.
Yeah, we try to train them so they all know how to do pretty much everything. I mean, there's definitely people that are better at different aspects.
Yeah.
And we try to cater towards what they're good at, obviously. But we do want, if a customer comes in here and they're like, oh, I want a tour of the barn, I want everybody to know how to give a tour of the venue space. Everybody should know how to like make a grab and go bunch, put together quick, that sort of thing.
So like they're thoroughly trained and like, what are the issues I need to handle today? Like how to manage the venue clients, how to manage our wedding clients, how to manage our retail store customers, like they're all a little different. So it really is like a hospitality thing, So I would say like, if I had to go back to school for something, it would certainly be like leadership and like hospitality management, I think would be like really helpful. And I do look for that when we are hiring people that have service, experience. And then if they've worked in hospitality or events, like, and I'm no longer hiring like school teachers that think they're going to get done at 4:00. Like I can't.
Yeah. I mean, one of our lead designers right now came to us and had never been a designer, had never done floral design other than on her own in her house. But she was in the hospitality, job before. So she knew,
how to work.
She was creative. She had an eye, and she took some workshops, some classes, and followed our lead. And now she, I put her as the lead on weddings all the time. So.
That's great. Do you let other florists work on your venue? Since they can bring in caterers and everybody else, do you let them bring in other florists?
We try not to.
But like, I kind of explain it this way. I'm like, I don't know, like if it's someone I know, like, okay, but like, I have to make income from the flowers, So I explain it like, if I was your caterer, I wouldn't let you have someone bring the shrimp tray. Like you have to get your flowers done in-house because that's what we do. And that's how we're able to like make the profit margin on this event. And have I been sweet talked and swindled into letting other decorators come in? Yes. Do I regret it every single time, Scott? And do I promise Dawn that I won't do it ever again? Yes. So here I am saying it on video. I am not going to allow outside decorators into my venue. There, said it.
It's also like, we have a certain aesthetic. And so like if pictures are going to go on social media and everything, we want it to be a garden party, not, somebody else's flowers at our venue that maybe didn't know the space as well. Like nobody knows how to make it look good better than our team.
Sure.
So really it's the best value for their money to just like trust us with the vision.
Wow. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it really does. I feel like a lot of times, you're right. People have good intentions, or they have a family member who's a florist, or, there's always some some angle that, well, it might pull at your heartstrings. It might not, but it could.
There
And,
is. And we do allow it from time to time.
Well, I did
Because
like if it's like her grandmother's
yeah.
peonies or something. I want them there.
And
Bring me your grandmother's peonies.
We were those people
Yes.
years ago that wanted to bring our own flowers to places. So, we do allow it from time to time. And I mean, we even do weddings now where people are like, well, I grow my own peonies. Can I bring them? And I'm like, yeah, bring your peonies. We'll put them in your wedding flowers, but we'll design it and we'll make it look good. You just grow them and bring them to us.
Sure.
I don't know. We're like, I just want everyone to be happy. Like, honestly, I just want people to come to us and leave with a good feeling. And sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know.
No, that makes sense.
We also don't require people here to have flowers. So like if they don't want flowers, we'll just put candles on the tables. Mary doesn't understand that at all. But like for some people, they don't need it.
Well,
so they don't have to get the flowers.
Well, okay, so
the whole time I make this date.
Okay, so now I have to ask this question. Being that you both have your own, it's probably your design style, even though they're probably similar, you have your own style. You both have your background in horticulture. You both bring years of experience to your business. How do you guys deal with conflict, or is there ever conflict? Do you guys always work harmoniously together? Being sisters.
Conflict. I mean, not huge. We both are pretty quick to like let things go. But we'll debate. Sometimes we like have differing opinions on color schemes, or she'll have like a certain look that she'll want, and I'm like, well, it's not always about what you want. Sometimes it's about what the client wants. And then, sometimes I'm definitely not as creative as her. So she'll be like pitching some idea and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but like, if you can make it happen, go for it. But we don't like fight insanity or days or weeks or anything like that. Like when we have a fight, we're over it by like an hour or two later. Like,
yeah, like say I want to, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, let's go. Let's do this design and propose this. And Dawn's like, well, that's not really like the price point or whatever. I don't know. And so I'll be like, all right, well, like, here's the options. Like, I'm a big fan of options. I'm like, okay, option A is this. Option B is this. Option C is this. So don't want to be like, option C sucks. Like the option C is not an option. I'll be like, all right, fine. Forget option C. And I'm like, let's go back to A and B. And then so we look at A and B and then we're like, all right, let's pull in some other thinkers and we'll ask like a few other people on my team to like weigh in on it. And then I think that usually gives us really great feedback on like which option to go with. And a lot of times, like, especially if it deals with like a client, I'm like super transparent about things. So I'll immediately just be like, let's just call the client and be like, here's option A and here's option B. Like, what are you thinking we should go with? And like, I think that's really nice that like, we can all just talk about it openly. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And we can make a decision like quickly instead of like mull over it like forever. Like no one has time for that, But like sometimes like she'll say like, no, Mary, like calm down. Like we can't do that. So we got interviewed twice for a reality TV show. And I think it was going to be on like Bravo or TLC or something like that. And they asked us like, what was the last big fight you had? And it was about like, we had ordered red peonies and they were red Kansas, but they weren't like that deep red. And Dawn was like, they're fine. They're going to be fine. And I was like, they're not going to be fine. She wanted red. And like, we thought about the shade of pink and versus red and whether it was going to be okay or not. And then I was like, I'm going in the house. And I like stomped in the house. And as we were telling like the Bravo TV guy about it, they were like, and then what? And I'm like, oh, and then we just went back to work. It was fine.
She ordered the peonies she wanted, and it was fine.
And they were like, yeah, okay, no one's gonna watch your show.
Yeah, they like came one day and watched us.
Yeah.
And they were like, you guys are too boring.
Too boring.
Nobody's yelling. There's not enough drama.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got a business to run. I don't have time.
Yeah, we don't have time for drama.
Tons of drama here.
Well, I totally understand that. But I'm glad you guys didn't make it on TV. And we froze again.
I think we would have had some. There are many times recently that we've been like, where's the reality TV? You know, like, come on, this would have been good.
I know, and I always have felt like there needs to be a reality TV show around the floral industry. Because I don't know, especially on the wholesale level, you feel like there's always some kind of drama. And whether it's people who don't pay their bills, or shipments that got destroyed, or volcanoes that interrupted flights, or strikes.
Yeah, that's a crazy world you're in. No thanks. It's like all the work and none of the fun. Like, you don't get to get your hands actually on the flowers. Mm-hmm. That's a sad world, that wholesale lifestyle.
It is. And, but luckily I get to see people like you light up when they get their flowers and they get excited. And that makes me happy. So
we've been so lucky. We've had a relationship with Delaware Valley Wholesale and Pennock for so long. And like, those sales reps, like, they're your lifeline, to have people that know what you need and will go to the end of the earth to get it for you. I mean, that's like, it's a relationship that is very, very coveted. Yeah.
Sure.
Very special.
Well, we're here at the end, and I always have to ask my advice question. And since I have two people, it's kind of like buy one, get one free. BOGO. We have a BOGO advice question. And I'm kind of curious if you guys have some advice you'd like to leave our listeners.
I think it's really important to remember like why you're in the industry. And I know for me, like when we were unable to do weddings and events because of COVID, and then when we got back into doing them, I felt like a part of me was missing when we weren't able to do them. And then that's when I realized, like, this is what I love. I love this relationship we're making with our clients and the feeling that we get when the candles are lit. And that's when I realized, like, I really am doing what I love. And I want people to find that and remember that in the work that sometimes is not as glamorous as we all hoped.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think, we'll never not do weddings because it is what we love. Even setting up those offsite weddings, like, you're there and it's so much work and you're so tired, but the end, when it's all set, you're like, oh, okay, this is why we do it. And then I would say, like, my main advice would be to get your core group of people that you can count on, that are there every week, that have the same vision as you, have the same love for what you're doing. It definitely makes a difference to have a people here that love what they're doing, want to be doing this, are part of we call them our flower family. Like, we'll take vacations sometimes with our staff, just so we're doing something not work related. And that has been key to our growth, I think, is like having people that we can count on and trust to grow with us.
Yeah,
and
we're having fun at work.
Yeah. And like, they understand that, there's growth to come.
No, that's incredible. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody doing that with their, going on vacation together, or doing those kind of fun things together. It's interesting. It's like what I always am telling, people, there's so much of this industry that's built on relationships, whether it's with vendors or clients. And sometimes we forget about the employees and, your staff or your coworkers, however you feel about them, and it's your flower family, and, building those relationships because, hopefully, I used to work with people I'd worked with for 20 years, and you don't hear about that very often nowadays, but, that's a lot of times when everyone's happy and it's always something. I mean, that's the one thing about our industry I think I also love is every week it's something different, and it keeps it exciting
Mhm.
and fresh um
There
and
was
fun.
like a moment recently at a wedding where my teammate and I, we were finishing, like the ceremony was just getting over and we were supposed to like move the ceremony items like into the reception. And so all the guests are kind of out of the way and the groom starts walking back and he starts walking towards me, my teammate Sydney. And I'm like, oh no, like, what does he need us to do? You know, this is weird. He should be with his guests. And he walked up to Sydney and I, and he was like, thank you so much for everything that you did. And he was talking like not only to me, but also to her. And I
Mm.
felt like it was like the best form of bonus and like feeling that she could get paid on, you know, to like have that gratitude shared directly with her instead of just to me. And I thought that that meant so much. Like that spoke so highly of him to say that to the whole team. I thought that, that was really nice. So I'll never forget that, you know, talking with other people too.
Yeah, it's and I'm sure Sydney. I'm sure she'll never forget that either,
Yeah.
because I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes that's part of that high when you're done with
Mhm.
the event and yes, you're getting paid to do something, but having that verbal appreciation when so many times people just
Mhm.
don't take the time to do that and
Yeah.
Yeah.
how
It was
special.
very thoughtful of him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, y'all, thank you so much for being on the Flower Podcast.
Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you know, everyone's out to us and like if they have more questions about a venue or operating a venue or contracts, like we are more than happy to help.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, thank y'all so much.